Greetings and welcome to the debut episode of The Metal Mystic, where we analyze the occult philosophy of some of our favorite metal artists from an Orthodox Christian perspective. Today we'll be taking a look at the Satanic philosophy of King Diamond and Mercyful Fate. King Diamond and Mercyful Fate may not be household names, but their influence on the metal genre is undeniable. Led by the maniacal frontman Kim Bendix Peterson, better known by his stage name King Diamond, Mercyful Fate and later King's self-titled solo band would go on to inspire dread and terror in the hearts of metalheads the world over, with their unique brand of occult horror throughout the 1980s and up to today. Inspired by the shock rock antics the likes of Alice Cooper and the theatrics of Genesis lead singer Peter Gabriel a decade prior, the Danish heavy metalers continued to push conventions and norms past their limits, utilizing the dynamic dissonances, pounding rhythms, and macabre imagery that would come to define the countless metal subgenres that sprouted in succeeding generations. Perhaps the first openly satanic musician to emerge onto the 80s metal scene, King Diamond's lyrics and compositions are saturated with demonic imagery and occult themes, reflected strikingly in the band's elaborate ritualistic stage shows. But while other bands at the time unseriously utilized devilish aesthetics as a provocative tongue-in-cheek gimmick, King Diamond used them to declare his sincerely held belief in the teachings of LaVeyan Satanism.
Of all the alleged satanic rockers that we've met, the only one who admitted to it, and had more than half an idea about it, was Mercyful Fate's King Diamond, who recommends the philosophies of Anton LaVey, the author of the Satanic Bible.
And you're on the air. Who's this?
Hello, this is Rich from Brooklyn.
You got a question?
Yeah. You've probably been asked this a lot of times before, but when did you start getting into Satanism and stuff?
Okay, for the 80th time, when did you first get into Satanism?
That was at the very beginning of Mercyful Fate, actually, and I had a very, very weird experience where...
With the cups?
Some glasses was rising, in the air in my apartment, and that got me interested in the occult, so I started reading a lot of books about the occult. And the way those books describe Satanism was not very nice, I couldn't go for that at all because it seemed sick to me. Then one day I came across the Satanic Bible written by Anton LaVey, and I read that book, and that was exactly the way I was living my life, what was in that book, the life philosophy there. So I've been going 100% for that ever since.
Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible was published in 1969, coinciding with the establishment of the Church of Satan, the first above-ground religious institution to officially identify as satanic. Consciously designed to be an adversary to existing spiritual belief systems, LaVey's brand of Satanism positions itself as an anti-religious religion, purporting to throw off the chains of past dogmas and superstitions in order to indulge in the self-gratification and pleasure-seeking forbidden by what he calls white light religions.
Well, it occurred to me for many, many years that there was a large gray area between psychiatry and religion that was untapped, and no religion had ever been based on man's carnal needs or his fleshly pursuits. All religions are based on abstinence rather than indulgence, and all religions, therefore, have to be based on fear. Well, we don't feel that fear is necessary to base a religion on. This is a very selfish religion. We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man, because this is man's natural feeling. This is based on what man naturally would do. If you're going to be a sinner, be the best sinner on the block. If you're going to do something that's naughty, do it, and realize that you're doing something naughty and enjoy it.
Satanism isn't dangerous at all, It's a very sound life philosophy, carry out your feelings, that's it. Have a good life, enjoy yourself, you don't know what's going to happen to you after this life.
In contrast to the prevailing religiosity of the time, LaVey contrived his new religious system as a secular philosophy of rationalism and self-preservation, gift-wrapping these ideas in religious trappings to add to their appeal. Ostensibly doing away with the spiritual dimension of traditional religious systems, LaVey's Satanism took the form of an atheistic materialism that emphasized individual selfhood and personal liberty over belief in an externalized God. Man needs ritual and dogma, LaVey wrote, but no law states that an externalized God is necessary in order to engage in ritual and ceremony performed in a God's name. LaVey's new dogma proclaimed the worship of the individual self as God, and adopted the figure of the devil as its ritualistic symbol of this self-worship. As current high priest of the Church of Satan, Peter H. Gilmore writes in his introduction to the Satanic Bible, Satan is embraced not as some devil to be worshipped, but as a symbolic external projection of the highest potential of each individual Satanist.
At least as far as the Church of Satan is concerned, we feel that Satan is polemic, he is allegorical, and he is symbolic. He represents the forces of nature that make mankind something unique and individual.
As we have seen, the metaphysical existence of the devil is downplayed and even denied in LaVeyan Satanism, echoing the sentiments of romantic poets like Blake and Shelley, who similarly used the figure of Satan to represent certain Enlightenment values of religious skepticism, with an emphasis on individual reason, though not without their own religious leanings. And yet, as skeptical as the Church of Satan may be toward other religious beliefs, it nonetheless leaves room in its teachings and practices for the supernatural and the paranormal. The practice of ritual magic is central to LaVeyan Satanism, though it is often couched in materialistic and rationalistic language, generally described in terms of applied psychology. The Church of Satan's Black Mass, for example, is conceived as a psychodrama designed to bring about a cathartic purgation of the subconscious repression and guilt imposed on the psyche by a society steeped in Christian principles. Magical ceremonies are often performed with the aim of providing a stimulus or psychological support for the attaining of a certain goal or desire, since above all else, the Satanist believes in complete gratification of his ego. Infernal prayers may be made for a successful sexual conquest, or curses may be called down upon perceived enemies in order to bring upon them misfortune and ruin. More often than not, these ceremonial aspects of LaVeyan Satanism are left up to personal interpretation. Quote, in our personal practice of Satanism, there is no limit to the supernatural you can put into it. You can do anything you want. Some can consider their performance on stage a ritual, a very powerful one, for whatever purpose. I advocate that. An emotionally charged rock concert performed by dedicated Satanists is today's rally ritual and call to arms. One of the most striking examples of satanic ritual in King Diamond's musical catalog can be found on Mercyful Fate's 1984 album, Don't Break the Oath. The title track, The Oath, contains lyrics taken verbatim from a Black Mass initiation ritual, a mocking inversion of the baptismal rites found in Orthodox Christianity and Roman Catholicism, to which the name of Jesus Christ is denied and allegiance is sworn to Satan. Interestingly, many of the lyrics from The Oath can also be found word for word on Coven's 1969 album, Witchcraft Destroys Minds and Reads Souls, on the track Satanic Mass, a 13-minute recording of a satanic initiation ritual, and the first of its kind. This Coven record is probably the earliest example of blatant and open Satanism in rock music, and lead singer Jinx Dawson, a self-professed member of an elite left-hand path family spanning numerous generations, has stated in multiple interviews that the album was written to be an academic record of satanic occult practices, replete with references to magical ceremonies, unholy rites, and even child sacrifice. It is unclear whether King Diamond simply borrowed these lyrics from Coven's album, or the two bands drew inspiration from the same source text. If this is indeed the case, I haven't found the primary source, but King was certainly influenced by Coven's music. In an interview with the authors of Lords of Chaos, he commented on Jinx Dawson saying, "An amazing singer, her voice, her range. Not that I stand up for the viewpoints on their Witchcraft record, which was like a good old Christian Satanism, but they had something about them that I liked." In contrast to Coven's musings on left-hand path Satanism, and despite all appearances to the contrary, King Diamond categorically denies any ideological proximity to the Christian paradigm, stating he believes neither in the Christian conception of God nor the devil, and often attempts to distance himself from the concept of devil worship, while nevertheless continuing to embrace its language and imagery.
The very first thing, usually if people come up to me and say, do you believe in the devil? Or, are you a devil worshiper? I'm like, hey, first of all, you explain to me what the devil is and who it is before we can continue talking. Because if I start saying something, it's usually the Christian Satan or devil, that is on people's mind, because that's the most widespread, or probably one of the most well-known characters in this entire universe. And, I don't personally believe in either the Christian God or the Christian devil or Jesus, Those three deities has nothing to do with me at all.
Right.
And what I believe in is a whole different matter, and it's not something you can find in LaVey's book either. Because when it comes to the spiritual side of things, the religious side, there is nothing in LaVey's book about those type of things.
Furthermore, King repeatedly decries the popular belief that Satanism necessarily involves nefarious exploits such as ritual murder and child sacrifice, citing the Satanic Bible as his ecclesiastical authority on the matter.
Let's get rid of all this old bullshit about Satanists drinking the blood of newborn children and things, because that's one big lie. It's something created by Christians,
Jeg skal nævne en ting her, som er meget den generelle opfattelse, folk de har af satanisme. Det er, at det er nogle folk, som er ondskabsfulde. De skal ud og have fat i små børn nede på legepladsen, op til alteret, og så er det ellers frem med kniven og drikke så meget blod som muligt. Det er den opfattelse, som kirken igennem årtusinder har prøvet at fremvise satanismen som værende. Der står i side 89 på i den her bog, øverst, under ingen omstændigheder vil en rigtig satanist nogensinde ofre et barn, eller for den sags skyld, noget som helst dyr. Det er sindssygt.
Even so, these scriptural prohibitions haven't stopped him from dabbling in the unsavory practices of mock sacrifice and even blood ritual as part of his concert stage shows.
We did the craziest things back then, when we started. We didn't have a lot of money. For instance, this one here, a guy that I still work with today, Ole Bang, he's a functioning tour manager. We used to take blood from his arm every time we played in the early days. When we had a show with Girls' School that turned into some crazy thing, because we took that and we had goose feathers according to a ritual, that was on the front of an altar that we have on stage, and he actually took
Your wife has her hand in her face, just shaking her head right now.
He actually took his own blood, with a needle and all this stuff, and then here's my blood, and then...
Wait, you would take your tour manager's blood every gig?
Yeah, we didn't play that many gigs back then.
This guy would be...
We couldn't.
Guy would be shriveled up mess by the time 3 shows in.
Yeah, actually, we still have it.
What did you do with the blood when you took it out of your tour manager's arm?
We had it in a little bowl on stage, and then we took...
Why not just use a prop?
It was still warm.
Okay. You guys were that authentic that you actually wanted real blood?
Yeah.
As was discussed earlier, King was initially drawn into studying the occult by way of an unexplainable paranormal experience. This led to a series of subsequent strange occurrences that brought him into communion with the mysterious spiritual entities that he refers to as them. In an interview for the horror story concept record entitled Them, King explains that he identifies these unknown spirits with terms popularly associated with the Satanic, although in his view, these words take on an entirely different meaning.
Them is the powers of the unknown, the powers of darkness. And that is very much the expression that covers the word Satan, within real Satanism. Satan means the powers of the unknown, the powers of darkness. And them is powers. These powers, the album will be called Satan. I tell you, them, we really had them in the studio this time around.
From this, we can see that King Diamond does believe in Satan, just not that Satan, and invokes the powers of darkness, just not those powers of darkness. Although for him, these beings are not necessarily evil per se. In fact, it seems that in King's mind, the categories of good and evil are ultimately arbitrary and ambivalent. And this is illustrated in his personal worldview regarding morality and reincarnation. In the book, Black Funeral by Martin Popoff, King discusses his unique formulation of the concept of reincarnation, in which he posits that an individual soul must take on a number of different lives in order to undergo the totality of human experience, including the experiences of killing and being killed, before transcending to another level of being that he calls the beyond. Though it needs to be said, King denies that killing is a necessary experience for his present incarnation. Ultimately, in King's view, religious belief is purely subjective and a matter of personal preference.
I'm not up to preaching to people. That's not what I want to do. I think people should believe whatever they want, and we can be just as good friends no matter what religion you believe in. I think it's important you believe in something.
Yet, for all of his posturing about tolerance and religious pluralism, King Diamond, in true satanic fashion, can't help but express deep resentment toward the Christian faith.
They go for a religion which was written down by man's hand, actually, 2,000 years ago, and they still go for that stuff. I'd admit that half of the Bible is very good, and there are things that you can use in today's society, but the other half is just too old. It's for the trash can. I just can't believe in God because he's that evil. And he'll respond, evil, what do you mean by that, But if he is so all-powerful and almighty, why can't he come down to earth and show himself to people so that they can see that he's for real and that he's the guy to believe in? Instead, he sits up in his heaven, those people, they don't believe in me, and when that final day comes, I'm going to roast them in hell. And if that's not
terrifying
not evil, I don't know what evil is.
Hvor kommer Satan? Altså ordet Satan, det er jo også inde i billedet.
Ordet Satan står jo og betyder jo direkte modsat eller omvendt. Og det er derfor, at korset er vendt omvendt, som man kan se. Altså korset vender den anden vej. Og det betyder, at det står for det omvendte, og det satanisme er meget det omvendte af, hvad kristendom.
And this too is completely in line with LaVey. Quote, Satanism is not just an atheistic stance, but also an anti-theistic stance. We prefer destruction of mystically oriented religions through active opposition rather than simple non-participation. This anti-Christian hostility seems to lie at the heart of LaVeyan Satanism, which lashes out at the perceived hypocrisy and tyranny of the Christian paradigm manifest throughout history in events such as the Crusades and witch trials, and even in LaVey's thinking, contemporary mindless consumer culture. Moreover, LaVey's desire for active opposition gave way to a concrete plan of attack. A number of passages in his biography allude to his satanic master plan, the exact details of which are kept under a veil of secrecy, though it seems safe to say that the overthrow of Christianity's influence on society was one of its main goals, and this was to be achieved through the organized efforts of a secret cabal. King Diamond seems to hint at his own participation in this master plan in an interview with the metal zine Iron Fist when asked about his relationship with LaVey. Not much more can be asserted on this subject without resorting to conjecture and speculation. Whatever the extent of these secret plans, it must be said that the Satanists, though misguided, are reacting to valid problems within Christianity, especially the diluted and ineffectual forms of mainstream Christianity which have been severed from their traditional roots after centuries of innovation, schism, and apostasy. In this day and age, genuine Christianity is all but hidden, obscured by the emerging monoculture of materialism and pseudo-spirituality. Nonetheless, only genuine Christianity can provide what the Satanist lacks, namely tradition, virtue, and redemption. Deprived of genuine spirituality, these self-professed Satanists turn to a parody of spirituality in a performative contradiction that unconsciously demonstrates a deep-seated desire for true religious experience. King Diamond, as a proponent of LaVeyan Satanism, subscribes to a philosophy of pure negation that defines itself solely in opposition to an already established belief system, and which ultimately tends toward destruction, dissolution, and oblivion. I have termed this philosophy anti-Christian nihilistic hedonism. Hedonism because of its emphasis on self-gratification and indulgence in sensual pleasure, which is nihilistic because of its denial of absolute truth and objective morality, and anti-Christian because of its opposition and open hostility toward the Christian faith. When challenged, the LaVeyan Satanists' pretense of rationalistic atheism is revealed to be a weak facade, belying a deep hatred for the sacred in favor of the profane through the influence of fallen spirits. For all of its lip service to logic and reason, the Satanic doctrine thrusts itself headlong into irrational contradictions. In this system, morality and religion are done away with, only to be replaced with newly contrived versions of the same, which in the final analysis prove to be not only extremely vague, but ultimately self-refuting. And the vague and self-contradictory nature of this philosophy only serves to drag its adherents into a dark maze of nihilism and absurdity, devoid of any meaning or purpose other than empty, self-obsessed pleasure-seeking. The teachings of the Church of Satan were a logical step in the trajectory of an uprooted culture, reeling from the effects of Nietzschean deicide, the collective trauma of 2 world wars, exacerbated by the brutality of the then ongoing war in Vietnam and the killing of JFK, and the reactionary hedonism of the 60s counterculture, not to mention the lingering shadow of occult currents cast by influential figures like Aleister Crowley and Helena Blavatsky, and even these were all merely symptoms of a gradual falling away from God in stubborn denial of his divine revelation to mankind. God is dead in the hearts of modern man, wrote Father Seraphim Rose. This is what the death of God means. And it is as true of the atheists and Satanists who rejoice in the fact as it is of the unsophisticated multitudes in whom the sense of spiritual reality has simply disappeared. Man has lost faith in God and in the divine truth that once sustained him. The apostasy to worldliness that has characterized the modern age since its beginning becomes in Nietzsche conscious of itself and finds words to express itself. God is dead, that is to say, we have lost our faith in God. There is no truth, that is to say, we have lost our faith in everything divine and absolute. To be sure, it must be admitted that there is a juvenile quality in the expression of most of modern Satanism. Those who so easily invoke Satan and proclaim Antichrist can have very little awareness of the full import of their words, and few intend them to be taken with entire seriousness. This naive bravado reveals, nonetheless, a deeper truth. The nihilist, since he usually believes in neither God nor Satan, may think it mere cleverness to defend, in his fight against God, the age-old enemy of God. But while he may think he is doing nothing more than playing with words, he is actually speaking the truth. The contemporary fascination with the dark and demonic carries a symbolic weight that should not be underestimated. The metal genre in particular has always been an artistic outlet for the feelings of angst and rebellion that inevitably arise when one is confronted with the harsh realities of an often bewildering and incomprehensible world. But to succumb to the undertow of bitterness and resentment that these feelings of rebellion engender is a dangerous temptation that can only lead to further degradation of the self and of society at large, making us vulnerable to the influences of a spiritual force whose ultimate goal is nothing less than the damnation of souls. We must not forget that though everything was created good by a loving God, it was through a misuse of free will that humanity fell into sin, bringing suffering and death into the world and corrupting our once divine and unsullied nature. This has resulted in mankind's present condition of fallenness, disequilibrium, and proclivity for wrongdoing. The world as we now experience it is a place of struggle and spiritual warfare. Our purpose here is to regain what was lost in the fall, namely salvation and eternal life. As scholar James R. Lewis has observed, the human nature to which LaVey appealed was humanity's animal nature, viewed through the lens of Darwinism. The human being in this view is little more than an animal with no ultimate morality other than law of the jungle, and no purpose other than survival of the fittest. This view of human nature is in reality what the fathers of the church have called humanity's fallen nature. The freedom that the Satanist seeks to find in appealing to human nature and worshiping his own will is really slavery to base desires and demonic forces, and leads only to death. In the words of St. Augustine, a man has as many masters as he has vices. The hedonism championed by Satanists makes a man a slave to his passions and disfigures his immortal soul. As Dostoevsky's Elder Zosima in his book The Brothers Karamazov remarks, by interpreting freedom as the propagation and immediate gratification of needs, people distort their own nature, for they engender in themselves a multitude of pointless and foolish desires, habits, and incongruous stratagems. Their lives are motivated only by mutual envy, sensuality, and ostentation. Add to this St. Ignatius Brianchaninov's observation from his book The Field. It is impossible to know the reason of God if one remains carnally minded. The apostle said, for to be carnally minded is death. The carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. Romans 8, 6-7. What is the carnal mind? It is a way of thinking that has come about from the state into which people have been led by the fall, which directs them to act as if they were to live eternally on earth, raising up all that is temporary and prone to entropy, demeaning God and everything that refers to pleasing God, and taking away salvation from people. Let us replace our carnal mind, which we share with the fallen spirits, with the reason of God shining out from the Gospels. There is a higher calling that we have ignored for far too long. We are called to rise above the turmoil and confusion of this fallen world in order to obtain the peace which passes all understanding. This is the last true rebellion, to forsake this dying and fallen world with all its falsehoods and become awake to the true, the good, and the beautiful, which is everlasting. On the societal level, we have lost touch with the saving truth of the Church of Christ. established by the incarnate Word himself and passed down by his disciples. A truth that is embodied in the saints of every age who were illumined and transformed by it, and who suffered and died to keep it and pass it on, even down to our times, in the saving ark that is the Orthodox Church. The truth is that God has revealed himself to us, by becoming a man and dwelling among us, and suffering with us even unto death, in order to show us the path to recovering what was lost, the gift of eternal life through selfless loving sacrifice. Through his death and resurrection, humanity's nature has been restored, and the possibility for redemption and transcendence of this mortal coil is freely available to all who sincerely seek it and are willing to struggle for it.